Zelda, the matriarch of Hyrule, what are her true intentions? Across her many incarnations, her actions have shaped the events of Hyrule. However, these actions rendered questionable results, actions that doomed Hyrule to perpetual conflict.
Since the new Zelda, known as Breath of the Wild, was revealed, many have theorized its story and its environment. How exactly did the Kingdom of Hyrule come to ruin? Many have pointed to Calamity Ganon as the sole perpetrator. But what are his motives? Or for that matter, what are Zelda's? What exactly caused this chain of events?
To really understand the legend, we will have to go back to the beginning. Prior to the first game in the timeline, mysterious entities known as the Golden Goddesses created the world. Curiously enough, they left behind an even more mysterious object, the Triforce.
To guard this object, these goddesses delegated the task to the goddess known as Hylia. With her Sheikah guardians by her side, they oversaw the protection of the Triforce. However, time went by until another entity sought to obtain the relic.
Enter the Demon King Demise. He led a bloody campaign to take the Triforce. For what reason exactly it remains to be seen, but a hard war was fought. Eventually, however, Hylia along with her Sheikah protectors became victorious, but not without injury.
Hylia suffered intense trauma after the war. Even still, however, Demise wasn't killed but rather sealed away. To address this issue, Hylia instituted a plan to protect the Triforce.
This plan included Hylia being reincarnated into a flesh and blood being, thus beginning the line of many Zeldas to come. At the end of the events of Skyward Sword, however, Demise would implement something similar, in which his anger would be reincarnated to seek vengeance against Hylia and her allies.
Centuries would pass, following the foundation of the first Kingdom of Hyrule led by Hylia's bloodline and the formation of the Gerudo tribe, where both lands would become isolated from each other. While the rest of Hyrule enjoyed bountiful resources, the residents of the Gerudo would struggle in the desert heat.
This is when we come across a young Gerudo male, bearing ambitions for a better life outside of the desert. He sought a way to claim power. His name is Ganondorf.
With manipulation and secrecy at hand, Ganondorf managed to enter close circles of Hyrule's royal family, ultimately culminating in Ganondorf learning about the power of the Triforce. Over the course of Ocarina of Time, he sought to use the Triforce to ultimately spread his empire.
However, the Hero of Time would cut down his ambitions, thus causing a chain of events that would define the rest of the series. So, from the information presented thus far, what are Zelda's goals? Like Hylia before her, her main objective is to safeguard the Triforce. From her time in Skyward Sword to Ocarina of Time, Zelda's goals revolved around this position.
Contrary to this, Ganondorf's goals, like Demise, is to take the Triforce. However, these original intentions became muddled and distorted as time went by. For example, at the end of Ocarina of Time, a split timeline event occurred. What thus followed are three distinct timelines.
In the adult timeline, when Hyrule became flooded, Ganondorf became much more solemn. Missing the old Hyrule, Ganondorf wished to restore the Lost Kingdom. Princess Zelda in this continuity naturally sought to safeguard the Triforce as her predecessors have.
In the child timeline, the Triforce was already split thanks to the events in Ocarina of Time. As a result, Ganondorf became defined by the Triforce of Power and by his rage. Angry at the Hylian crown, Ganondorf seemed to want revenge above all else, to destroy the Kingdom of Hyrule. As a result of these events, Princess Zelda sought to safeguard her people.
And finally, in the Downfall timeline, Ganondorf became much like Demise, a void in space that seeks to consume everything around it. As a result of these three timelines, Zelda's goals throughout the chronicle have altered a bit. Since the creation of the Kingdom of Hyrule, and of course the subsequent generations of Zelda, protecting the Triforce gave way towards protecting the kingdom itself.
So how does this lead into the new Zelda known as Breath of the Wild? As far as we know, the Kingdom of Hyrule is no more. What is left of the Proud Land is nothing more than ruins. So if the kingdom is no longer around, would that mean that Zelda would be primarily focused on the protection of the Triforce?
To lead in with this line of thought, an interesting quote found in Breath of the Wild brings some light to this situation. The beast. When the beast regains its true power, this world will face its end. Notice the terms regain true power, and the world will face its end. From the quote, we may determine that Calamity Ganon desires to destroy the world, but how exactly will it go about doing so, unless this entity somehow is able to access the Triforce? Remember, a portion of the quote reads, "When the beast regains its true power." Now, what is the beast's true power? Since this is Ganondorf we're talking about, can we infer that this power is indeed the Triforce? Or more specifically, the Triforce of Power?
Perhaps Calamity Ganon in this continuity, whenever in the timeline, seeks to obtain the Triforce to end the world. But why? What are his motives? Ganondorf in the adult timeline didn't really want to destroy the world, but rule it. Ganondorf in the child timeline wanted to destroy the Kingdom of Hyrule, but in Breath of the Wild, the kingdom is already gone. And that leaves the Downfall timeline, where Ganon becomes more of a force than flesh, seeking to destroy all who is near it. Regardless of where the game takes place in the timeline, one thing is clear.
That Zelda's true goal is to safeguard the Triforce by any means necessary, regardless of the cost. Like Hylia before her, she was willing to become flesh and blood and guide a servant just to defeat Demise. However, a question remains. In Breath of the Wild, it has been noted that Link was sleeping for 100 years, and the voice that wakes up Link somehow knows him.
Many have speculated whether or not this voice is Zelda, but an interesting question arises. If Link was sleeping for 100 years, would Zelda be over 100 years old if she was around prior to this period? Or is Princess Zelda even in this continuity? Or has she reverted back to her form as Hylia?
After all, we do see a statue of Hylia in the Temple of Time, and the Sheikah speak of Hylia rather than Princess Zelda. Could it be that Zelda somehow became Hylia again? Who knows? But since Hylia was willing to become Zelda to guard the Triforce, it wouldn't be far-fetched to imagine Zelda becoming Hylia to do the same thing.
Another interesting thing to note is that in current trailers of Breath of the Wild, the Triforce is not really talked about. Does Link even hold the Triforce this time around, or is the relic more of an item like in the past games?
It is difficult to determine the answer, but something enigmatic still remains. The foundational conflict of the Zelda series revolves around the Triforce. When Hylia became flesh as Zelda, it caused a chain of conflicts towards Demise. This conflict culminated in the aggression between Ganondorf and the royal family, and this conflict may be seen even here in Breath of the Wild. So what is the Triforce exactly? Is there a new tale to be told about this enigmatic relic? Or what about the Sheikah? What can we learn from their technology? Well, those are tales that will be told next time. Thanks for watching The Theory, everyone. Special thanks goes to Commonwealth Realms' Joey Ferris for joining in on this video. And an even bigger thanks to our patrons,